This is Chris Bumstead. He is your men's Classic Physique Division champion. He fits in this division just like a glove. There is, of course, weight limits, weight restrictions. So like I said, a guy built like this, he fits right into the division. And of course, he is a champion. He is an Olympia champion. Now, had Chris Bumstead competed back in the 90s, he would have had to tango with the big boys. He would have had no choice whatsoever. So there is a very good possibility that he would not be a Mr. Olympia champion. And back then, there was some big boys like Paul Dillette and Kevin Levrone. I mean, there was no doubt that these guys were suited to the division, to the open class division. So had there been 212 or men's classic physique division, it would have been plain to see that most of the guys would have been in the open class. But a guy like Flex Wheeler, on the other hand, I mean, sure, he was quite massive by times, in particular here at the British Grand Prix. But you know what? You go back at the start of his career, and he maybe would have made weight for classic physique, but if not, it would have only been a few pounds he would have had to lose. So you know what? He might have went down that path. But today we are going to discuss some bodybuilders that, in my opinion, without a shadow of a doubt, would not be competing in the open class if there was 212 or classic now, or if these guys competed nowadays. And obviously, guys, Lee Priest is the first guy we're going to take a look at, and I'm sure by now you have guessed which one was Lee, who's the little guy at the end. I mean, this guy was so good, but of course, he could never even place past the top 6 at the Olympia because he was only 5'4". He had to go against guys 6 feet plus, and not only big giants, but very quality bodybuilders like Jay Cutler. I mean, when it comes to bodybuilding, when all things are equal, of course, bigger is always better. And I think it's just as obvious to you guys where I would put him. It wouldn't be classic physique. I think Lee Priest would fit in like a glove. Just like Chris Bumstead in the men's classic physique division. I think he would fit right in with the 212 guys. You know what? I actually think Lee Priest, had he been competitive now, or if there was 212 back in the day, he would have been 212 champion at least 5 or 6 times. But that's just me. I'm sure most of you guys do agree with me that Lee Priest would make a perfect 212 bodybuilder. Now, this guy, on the other hand, he most certainly would never have made the 212 division. This is Charles Claremont. And this guy was incredible. And at first glance, I'm sure most of you guys can guess, I would say that he would be a perfect men's classic physique division competitor. I mean, this guy was so good that it is a shame, a darn shame, that he never placed higher than 7th at an Olympia level. He had to go against big giants like Paul Dillette. It is no wonder. And he was pushing the size as it is. He could have stood to actually be a little bit leaner. And for men's classic physique, I think that he would have most certainly had to lose a little bit of weight. But I mean, those lines, the aesthetics, he really had to push it as far as the weight is concerned and the size. And he really did. He lost all of those classical lines. I mean, trying to keep up with the big giants, the size of the legs and things of that nature back then. And truth be known, the leaner he was, the higher he placed at an Olympia level. He placed 7th in 93, and he actually was his leanest, which goes to show me that if he competed now, he would have to get even leaner, and he would actually probably show more of his physique. So I think Charles Claremont would have been a men's classic physique, if not champion, then, you know, a contender for sure. And he wasn't alone. There was a guy right beside him, almost the exact same deal. This is Milos Sarsev, and like I said, he was in the same boat as Charles Claremont. Now, as is, he probably would not have made weight for men's classic physique, but look at him earlier on in his career, those perfect lines. I'm telling you right now, this guy would have been a shoo-in for a men's classic physique division competitor. And like I said, as is, he was not placing that high at an Olympia level. So like all of the other guys, He pushed it, and by 1997, he was huge, mind you. He was actually one of the bigger guys up there a lot of the times, but it really took away from those classical lines and the aesthetics. And if he had worked on just the detail alone, could you imagine how much more refined this physique would have been? So I guess it would have been Milos versus Charles Claremont for the men's classic physique division title back in the 90s. Or if they competed now, Bumstead would have been in trouble. Now let's shift gears to obviously the 212 division, considering the taller man in the picture is Nasser El Sanbadi, and there was no way, shape, or form that this guy was ever going to make classic physique. One of the bigger dudes, the little guy beside him, was a phenomenal bodybuilder. This is John Sherman. And if not for his height, this guy, he would have been cracking that top 6 at the Olympia level. I think for sure. I mean, the detail into this guy, and make no mistake about it, as is his tiny stature, he was still defeating some pretty stiff competition by times. But I mean, come the Olympia stage, things of that nature, a guy just like Nasser El Sanbadi, there was no way, shape, or form that he was ever going to defeat guys like that, or Kevin Levrone. So a 212 division, if they had opened that up back in the 90s, he would have been the first guy to jump in there. And if he competed now, I think he would have been probably a top 5 placer at the Olympia, if not even higher. John Sherman was phenomenal. Now we're going to finish off with these 3 guys to make it a little bit more interesting. Shawn Ray, Momo Ben Aziza, and Lee Labrada. These 3 guys could have competed in all 3 divisions. Well, aside from Momo with the classic physique, I don't think he would have made weight, but either which way, it is a variable. Obviously, they all had good success in the open class, and as far as 212, wow. Now, let's begin at the end with Lee Labrada. Where do I think he would have competed? Obviously, he placed second as an open class competitor, but as a 212 athlete, I really think that he could have been a multiple-time Olympia champion. But you know what? I don't think that Lee Labrada really liked to push it as far as weight limits, things of that nature are concerned. I think he would have been perfect as a men's classic physique and, dare I say, champion. I think for sure, with his classical posing. What a poser. What a poser. So yeah, Lee Labrada would have went the way of classic. Now, as far as Momo Ben Aziza, well, a lot of people could argue and say he would have been like a Hattie Shupin. He would have went into the open class. He would have been a mastodon. But I think he's, quite a bit shorter than a Hattie Shupin. I think he would have saw fit to be a multiple-time 212 division champion had he competed in the 90s or today, guys. I'm telling you right now, Momo Ben Aziza, he did not mess around as far as back development, conditioning is concerned. So yeah, even Derek Lunsford would have been in trouble against this guy. So that just leaves one piece of business. Shawn Ray. This guy would have been a shoo-in any division. Of course, he had the classical lines. Would have been a nice little battle between him and Lee Labrada, too, for the men's classic physique division title, or even today against your Terrence Ruffins, your Chris Bumsteads. Shawn Ray, like I said, would have been a shoo-in, and not to mention one of the best posers of all time. Of course, Shawn was packed with muscle as well, and condition, so he could have been a multiple-time 212 division champion as well. So the guy really meant business. But ultimately, and this will be my final thought on this, ultimately, Shawn Ray, the human being, the person, he wants to be the best of all time. And to be the best, you got to be an open class competitor. So he's a very gutsy guy, I think, beyond the shadow of a doubt. Shawn Ray would have pushed it, I guess. He would have had a little bit more size if he competed now. I think he still would have been an open class competitor and maybe even a champion with the absence of a Dorian Yates. And if they had those 2 divisions back in the 90s, I also think that he would have went the way of the open. Definitely some debate though. Of course, when it comes to Shawn Ray, maybe the only man in the history of bodybuilding that could have won all three, the 212, men's classic, and in the open, depending on who was around. Obviously, he never was able to beat Yates, but if he competed now, you never know. Just a fun one, guys. Really hope you enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments section below some guys from the 90s that you guys think would have been perfect for the 212 or the men's classic. Hit thumbs up on the video, guys. Subscribe to the channel. Have a good one.